Welcome to the second episode in a two-part Legendarium series about Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon. In part 2, Around the Moon, we will talk about the second book in Jules Verne's famous duology. Between 1865 and 1870, Verne wrote 3 novels, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, likely his most famous book. By the time he wrote Around the Moon in 1870, Verne had become a more self-assured writer, and the second half is more dramatic and tightly written. Verne correctly deduced that the shell would have to reach escape velocity to escape Earth's gravitational field. He calculated that speed to be 24,000 miles an hour, quite close to what the Apollo missions achieved a century later. Of course, Verne did not realize that any vehicle which accelerated from 0 to 24,000 miles per hour would crush its passengers flat and vaporize the vehicle, which would have ended the novel very quickly. Yet Verne correctly envisioned the vehicle as a sealed canister from which the aeronauts could only look through strong windows rather than a spacefaring boat or carriage. Verne also correctly depicted the weightlessness that the aeronauts experienced once they reached beyond the gravitational field of the Earth. Aeronauts in stovepipe hats and 19th century suits then bob around the projectile vehicle, dealing with various dangers, in stark contrast to the suspense-free first book. First, the aeronauts deal with asteroids hurtling through space. Verne imagined asteroids as being engulfed in flame, not realizing that no fire burns in the oxygen vacuum of space. Verne also believed, as other men did at the time, that the Earth had a second moon captured by Earth's gravity, orbiting 4,650 miles above the Earth. First observed by Frederick Petit in 1846, Petit believed an asteroid orbited Earth every 2 hours and 45 minutes. And long after other astronomers disproved his theory, Petit spent his life coming up with new calculations to prove himself right about his little moon. Though we now know Petit's second moon does not exist, it survives in Verne's book. This orbiting asteroid deals the projectile vehicle a glancing blow that kills one of the dogs brought on board. It also knocks the aeronauts off course, and they pass to one side of the moon instead of landing there. As such, they can only look down upon the moon from orbit, not land as they originally hoped. While orbiting the moon, the passengers believe they see volcanoes. In Verne's time, many scientists mistook the craters on the moon's surface for volcanoes. While the moon may have been volcanic in the distant past, we now know those craters to be the result of meteor strikes, though a belief in a volcanic moon would persist into the 20th century. On the other hand, Verne correctly depicted the aeronauts seeing phases of the Earth like full or crescent from lunar orbit. Verne plainly felt uneasy describing the surface of the moon in detail. Additionally, his explorers would have no way to launch back into space. That would have ended the novel with his 3 heroes in exile, not enjoying a triumphant return. Indeed, the 3 men originally planned on devoting the rest of their lives to studying the moon. They would then spell out messages back home using huge block letters that could be observed with telescopes. Of course, this is not to be. Instead, the men endure a long journey across the dark side of the moon. With no sunlight, the 3 aeronauts endure freezing temperatures with no fuel. To return home, the 3 men use fireworks they had originally planned to use in slowing their descent to the lunar surface to escape Moon's orbit. The rockets send the projectile vehicle back to Earth. As ocean covers 3/4 of the Earth's surface, Verne has them land in the Pacific Ocean, not far from Hawaii. Thankfully, the crew of the USS Susquehanna is engaging in another technical marvel of the age, helping to lay the first telegraph cable from Hawaii to the United States. They see Barbicane's shell splash down, which is fortunate, otherwise the heroes would have been lost at sea. The ship leaves a buoy to mark the location and then returns to San Francisco and notifies an admiral. The admiral, of course, turns to the Baltimore Gun Club, and acting President Maston arrives with a diving bell to look for the shell's location. Maston devises a method for lifting the 19,200-pound projectile vehicle. When the men are finally hoisted up, the sailors find them happily playing a game of chess, having had no doubt they would be rescued. So why do we still remember Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon more than 150 years after modern astronomy has disproved more than a little of it? First, it is an extraordinary mix of 20th century science and 19th century culture. It makes otherwise flat and single-minded characters who do not even have family life that they talk about inhabit an imaginative realm outside history, like the Norse gods. It makes the story both exotic and familiar, and gave us a remarkably good guess about what a lunar voyage would look like 100 years ahead of schedule. Small wonder that Verne's body of work influenced steampunk, the science fiction subgenre that takes inspiration from 19th century technology. Some of Verne's characters, as well as the machines he wrote about, have appeared in other famous works. As Ray Bradbury wrote, we are all, in one way or another, the children of Jules Verne. That wraps things up for this Legendarium series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.